Welcome to the Edifice Complex, the property design and development podcast. Let your hosts Adam Muggleton and Robert Bean keep you up with who is innovating and doing great work, perspective on the adjacent possible, and challenges to the status quo.
Welcome to the 100th episode of the Edifice Complex podcast. I'm Robert Bean, your co-host, unofficial mediator here with my colleague, official agitator, heavy emphasis on agitator, friend, and Yoda of most everything to do with buildings, Mr. Adam Muggleton. Say hello, Sir Yoda.
Hello there. So 100, can you believe we've convinced 100 people to talk to us?
Did you get your nails done for this episode?
I wish.
I was going to get a pedicure,
100 is a big milestone, It puts us in the Seinfeld space. No, I wish. But
yeah,
it is a big deal, actually. And I'm sort of been a bit reflective on that this morning. 100 people talking to us. One of the reasons we started this was to put people out there as role models, right? Give people a thing to look at and to make me less angry. It hasn't made me less angry. But boys, it's been a great time speaking to everyone and putting some really interesting people out there for other people to see and be inspired by. And to that point, our guest, right?
Yeah. So today's guest has my kind of bio. Basically, it comes down to doctorate in building science, 33 years as a principal of his own firm. Have a nice day. Just about everybody we get on, we could spend the whole show reading the bio. But I love how our guest has let society do his resume reading. I'm going to read one quote from one guy that represents probably a million quotes. And he says this: in 40 years in the construction biz, I've seen several ways of witchcraft passing as energy conservation. Joe has been an anchor of rationality and a sea of idiocy during many of those years. I totally agree with that. Welcome to the show, Joe Lstiburek.
It was an honor and a pleasure, and I think the world of you two folks as well. So it's awesome. Thank you for having me on board.
You're welcome. Because we get to corrupt the minds of some STEM students and maybe their parents too, rather than do sort of a traditional introduction here, I want to share 3 stories of Joe coming across my radar screen. And the first one, and you probably won't remember this, Joe, but this is going back probably like 1981, 1982, something like that. And you were flying Canada's R2000 flag across the country.
Yeah,
And and I don't remember, I was in school, so I don't actually, I'm trying to, it's 40 years ago, for God's sakes, or more than that. And so I don't quite remember where it was, but I remember listening to you and thinking to myself, I'm too dumb to appreciate who this person is. And so but I was smart enough to pay attention. And then I think it was like 30 years after that I signed up for the Joe and John show in some course that you guys were running in Toronto. And I remember thinking, and what it was a catharsis for like 50 engineers who had withheld their humor their whole life. And I've never seen 50 engineers have a group hug. It was like, it actually brought tears to my eyes that you guys were able to extract, let the humor go. And I just thought that was really cool. And then it was, I think the third time that was really important was when I got invited to speak at your camp. And I remember thinking to myself, really, I get to stand up in front of 400 people and do my shtick? And then after that, I think I retired. But the 3 lessons there for our students is that when you're in school and someone comes across your radar screen, you're probably too naive to realize how important these people are. So go back into that person's history and look at who their mentors were, and your mentors were legends. And had I known that at the time, I would have stalked you for a lot longer than I did. But that's the first message for the kids. And the second one is that don't ever lose your sense of humor. It'll make you constipated, and that's never a good thing. Right? And then the third thing is that if you ever get a chance to do your shtick, in front of a whole bunch of peers, prepare, and then just have fun with it. And those are the three things I learned from you. So normally we ask people to tell your origin story, and we should let you have your origin story because, like, you do have a cool story. But also when you're telling us the story, what are the things that you learned as a kid? Because you had some amazing people. So tell us a little bit of that story.
Well, my dad was a fighter pilot during the Second World War, and he was a war hero. And then he was in the Czech Republic, and he got arrested during the the revolution in 48. He was sentenced to prison at hard labor in Siberia, and he escaped on a train with one of the guards that was a classmate of his, like von Ryan's Express, crossed into the border into West Germany and joined the American Army, served for 2 years and got his papers to come to the United States. Well, he got so seasick on the boat trip when it docked in Halifax, Nova Scotia, he got off the boat and said, "I'm going to be a Canadian." And so he had a choice to go into the mines or go into a farm field. And he was a mining engineer. There's no freaking way I'm going to go into the mines. So he became a farmer. And then, believe it or not, applied for a job as a machinist at de Havilland Aircraft. And they said, "Well, you're an engineer." And so they wouldn't let him go into the machine shop. He ended into the engineering department, and he left. He retired as the head of the engineering department at Havilland Aircraft. He was key in designing the Otter, the Beaver, and the Caribou. And so I grew up around planes. And my dad built a jet helicopter in the freaking garage. It was crazy. In a machine shop. I grew up with, those engineering from I popped out of the womb, and there was, going to be an erector set or something. And all I wanted to be in my life was a pilot, but my eyesight sucked, so I couldn't get a license. And so I ended up in aerospace engineering. So I ended up being an aerodynamicist. And so that's my undergrad. And so when somebody says it's not rocket science, I can actually comment on that because I was a rocket scientist. Well, when I graduated at University of Toronto, aerospace engineering, there were no jobs. So I ended up as a laborer on a construction site. And so the best thing that ever happened to me was not being able to get a job when I graduated. Mm-hmm. So I was one of the few people that could read drawings and read and write, ask English questions. And I started asking questions, and I got adopted, believe it or not, by the local building officials because I really wanted to know why. And so they were my first mentors. And then they said, "Well, you need to talk to these people." And so I would drive from my mother's basement in Downsview, Ontario, 10 hours one morning a week to sit in the National Research Council of Canada's Division of Building Research coffee place at mid-morning to be able to talk to, and they were freaking out that this kid would drive all that time just to spend 45 minutes listening. And so then they would, "Oh, you got to stay for the day," and whatever. And I met the legends. I met a dozen of the greatest of the great, and I got adopted as the young punk kid, and never forgot that. And so even into their 80s and 90s, I was always the young punk kid. And part of the deal is that I'm obligated to do the same thing. And so whenever a youngster gives me a call, I don't care. I drop everything. My kids ended up, my daughter is way smarter than me. She's a professor of architecture at Virginia Tech, believe it or not. So, and I married an architect. So I'm an engineer, married an architect with an architect daughter. I mean, my son's a contractor. I'm doomed. So yeah, construction was an accident, and it's been the best thing that ever happened to me, and I enjoy the heck out of it. And there's nothing like going from digging holes working with your hands to doing a complex three-dimensional airflow network, model and saying, "Well, that doesn't work." And you say, "Well, how could you argue with the model?" "Well, because it doesn't reflect reality."
Yeah.
"Well, you say that." "Well, look at the color of the hair." The model gives you an answer that doesn't reflect reality. In fact, that's I try to tell the kids, turn off the computer. Luke, turn off the guidance system. Go with the force. Use your
Yeah.
damn freaking judgment and experience.
Yeah.
God, you sound like Jordan Peterson there. Look, God. That's funny. So actually, I'm so glad you said that. I say this to lots of people, that a model is a simplification of reality, and it is not the be all and end all, right? It is just a simplified version, may or may not work. It's the equivalent of yeah, that sounds about right.
Well,
Yeah.
there are limits, and one of the things that I have a lot of fun with the modeling cult. I call them a
Yes,
cult.
that's
Is
exactly
that
what it is.
how can you? I get asked to evaluate the models, and they said, well, how can you possibly disagree with the model? And I says, well, we ran the model on something historically that's been known, and it came up with the wrong answer. And so if it's coming up with an answer that isn't correct based on history, is history wrong or is the model wrong? And so now we have these people called clients, and clients always want freaking models. They're MBA graduates, and they always want their damn model. And so we will give them a tuned model. And let me explain what tuned means. I make sure that the model gives the right answer from historical experience. Anyway, one of my best friends on the planet is Hartwig Kunzel, and Kunzel's got one of the best models of all time, Wolfie. And Joe, they don't know how to use my model. You have to calibrate the model, tune it, and then you have to understand that there's a limit to how far you can push it. And then you need to test that. You need to push things until they break, because at the breakage point, you get the limit to performance, and then you can establish a safety factor. We used to teach this, not anymore.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
No time for that.
I remember
feedback and
Yeah, I
calibration of a
remember
model. Sorry, mate,
I
go.
remember one of the and I don't remember if it was at your camp. Actually, it was before it was actually before that time. Mark Bomberg, is that right?
Yeah, Bomberg we call him Doctor because he's got 2 PhDs. Yeah, and he's got this Polish, give bomb to kill moose and squirrel. He sounds just like Boris and Natasha. So, he's wonderful, but he appreciates his limits, and you have to understand. An Eastern European with 2 PhDs and a wicked sense of humor that nobody appreciates, you love that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he was telling me, like, when he was teaching at the University of Saskatchewan, he would say to his students, "You don't touch the computer until you know the answer."
Well, he was one of the mentors.
Right? And I think, and I took that advice when I was growing my business, and we would hire grads at the University of Saskatchewan, and we wouldn't let them touch the computers. They had to do manual calculation. I think it was 6 or 9 months, right, until we felt confident enough that they understood what those numbers meant, right? And then they had to go out into the job sites and validate it.
Okay, I got to tell you, I was the last undergraduate class in engineering at the University of Toronto that was not allowed to use a calculator. We had to use a slide rule. And, you wanted to think about the calculation process because it would take freaking hours. And you wanted to, know whether or not you're in the right area. So you have to do your quick and dirty. It can't be worse than this. It can't be better than that. And by the way, it's kind of approximate. And that we should do the same thing. We should take the computers away from them.
Absolutely.
Here's a piece of paper and a pen, and here's some arithmetic, and you see, they didn't know you didn't know where the decimal point would go in the calculation, so you had to have a rough idea. We don't teach that anymore.
No, we don't. And I remember when I got out of school, and again, there was no job. So it was, the Trudeau era. It was National Energy Program, right? Alberta was basically abandoned by the world. Texans took all their money and their equipment and left the country. And so I applied for a job for a solar engineering technologist. I didn't know dick shit about solar, which the owner eventually figured out after a couple of weeks. Said, "Bean, you don't know what you're talking about, do you?" I don't know whether I should fire you or keep you around for your chutzpah, but he kept me around, and I actually went into the manuals and I rewrote them. Like, I manually rewrote the formulas and tried to understand what all the elements were. And then, so that's when that happened. And then, so that would have been in like 1984, and then Apple came out with their, I think it was the Mac, and they had a spreadsheet tool. I thought, well, I can take this shit and I can put this into a spreadsheet. But you're right. We shouldn't let people loose on computers and software until they know the answers. Yeah.
It's a false sense of what they call it, chauffeur's knowledge, right? You feel like you know what you're doing if you've got a model and you've got a book to guide you through it, but you actually don't, right?
Well, here's where you guys might be irritated with me, but here goes. Usually less than 10% of my effort on any project is to figure out what the answer is and what's going on. And then the 90% is to convince everybody else that this is in fact what's going on. The actual thought process of figuring it out isn't the issue. It's to create a sense of understanding, because to get the team on board. And you end up having to you have to understand psychology. You have to understand the way people's minds work, the politics from the manufacturer side, the politics of the activist side, the politics of the financial side. You're going to use a Canadian term, you got to stick handle your way through all of that. And we don't do a good job of preparing the youngsters of that. And they get crushed. And I was lucky. I got adopted. And young Joseph, let me explain this. This is what's going on over here. The real answer is over here, but you have to work, and guided discovery. And I'm like, okay, I got it. But I was lucky. So I always tell people, find some old person, male, female, whatever, and suck their brain dry.
Yeah.
And it's not the equations, it's the life experience and how to solve problems. And
See, we could be running a marriage counselor class right now.
I'm not going to go there, right?
What you're saying
me
is
neither.
right. When I work with some of the senior leaders in our business, my message to them is, part of your job is persuasion, persuading people to work for you, persuading the clients where to go and that your idea is going to work. That being able to tell that story and persuade people, that is a killer app that most engineers, quite frankly, just don't have in their toolbox.
Well, and the other thing is that you have to have their back.
Yeah.
And you have to say, look, it's okay to make a mistake. Don't hide it. Talk to me. Let's sort it out. And by the way, I point out failure has made me the man that I am today.
Yeah.
Right.
Huh? What? You're this big, you don't understand. You learn more from a failure than you do from a success, because you don't always know why success happens. But if you talk yourself through, understand, you work your way through it, and you collaborate. There are people that refuse to talk to other people. I don't understand that. I mean, and a network and a team is better than one person who thinks they're incredibly smart.
Oh, absolutely. So, one question I'd like to ask you is, when you reflect back over your career, you've seen a lot of change. So, I've been working 40 years, right? I've seen a lot of change, yet nothing has changed. I'm very disappointed in the state and performance of the built environment right now, particularly residential. So, how do you feel about what you've seen over the course of your career?
Well, things become intolerably bad, and then we intervene.
Yeah.
And so we did incredibly stupid things in Canada. In the late 70s and the early 80s, we had COSP and CHIP, Canadian Home Insulation Program, and the Canadian Oil Substitution Program. And people didn't understand that when you change the energy flow and you change the airflow dynamics, you could kill the building as well as kill people. We rotted lots of buildings, and I got fired when I testified at a coroner's inquest in Canada with a family that 5 died in Mississauga, Ontario. So the reason I ended up working in the United States is I couldn't get a job in Canada because the best thing that ever happened was that, the old timers helped me out. But we destroyed buildings, and we killed people, we made them sick. And then we learned. And I thought we did a spectacular job up to in the 2000s. Very, very proud. And then we seem to have forgotten. In other words, we crashed and burned, we recovered, and then we forgot. And I, I'm not happy with the architectural and engineering professions on both sides of the border. Do we still have a border? Are we the 11th province?
It's fluid, let's say. It's a fluid situation.
I don't remember anymore. But we're spending we're not teaching architects what they need to know to be architects, or not teaching engineers what they need to know to be real engineers. And the architects are in love with art, and the engineers are in love with their computer simulations. And we have to change that. And we don't collaborate and share. I give everything away. All right. You can call me at 2 a.m. I'm like, I don't care what time zone you're in. But and then the other thing that really bothers me is you've got the activists. And my ongoing joke is, maybe it's not a joke, if you can't do math or physics, become an activist. If you aren't very good as an activist, become a politician and write laws and regulations. And so we've got activists that don't have any understanding of what's actually really going on. And I have a lot of fun when they say, well, the science has been proven. And I said, well, you're clearly an arts graduate. You never prove science. You can only disprove science. And, oh, what? Give me a break. And so we're going through this incredible phase right now where we are going to see some disasters. We're beginning to see them already, not because people are evil. Their hearts are in the right place, but you can't just double the thermal resistance of your walls and building enclosures. You can't make the building tighter than a Scotsman in a bar without appreciating the consequences. And then, okay, we have to put in a humidifier because, because of COVID. And, putting a humidifier in buildings that are 30 to 50 years old that survive because they're between 15 and 25% relative humidity, and increase the humidity to 35 or 40% because the health people say that it's healthy. We're killing buildings. And the only people that are happy are the fire people because the buildings are too wet to burn.
The Edifice Complex will continue in just a moment.
Are you struggling with paperwork, spreadsheet overload, and project management? Then Blue Rhythm is the solution to help you. Streamline your commissioning and project management process. Go paperless, increase efficiency, and save money. Blue Rhythm is commissioning and project management software by practitioners for practitioners, adapting to your workflows and processes, and doing things your way. Blue Rhythm provides painless and fast onboarding by bringing your existing workflows, forms, checklists, and issues logs into Blue Rhythm for you. You can use their pre-built templates to customize your commissioning workflows. And Blue Rhythm can fully handle the transition from your current software platform. Blue Rhythm is secure, scalable, and reliable, backed by amazing support, and accessible 24/7 on any Windows, iOS, or Android device. Why are you still using paper and hard-to-control spreadsheets? Start your free Blue Rhythm account today at bluerhythm.com.
And now, back to the show.
So, hey, Joe, I have a question for you that has to do with current states of research. And I'm not the most pleasant guy to talk to when it gets to ASHRAE and research because I'm pretty much at the point of my career where I can say stuff and not have to worry about it. And it has to do with the repeated polishing of the cannonball. And I don't know if you know the story of polishing the cannonball.
Well, that's right. Our version was polishing the turd.
You're just not going to get that much more out of it, right?
Yeah.
So we have a number of research projects in front of us now that we have to, decide on these RTARs, and I look at them and I go, we can't get industry to apply what we already know. So what point is it that we should just keep adding to the knowledge of shit that people aren't do anything with in anyways? Where do you draw the line? Like, why do, and I get the value of research, right? But
Well, yeah,
if no one's doing anything
okay, I can't resist. Can I tell you why things are beginning to change fairly rapidly? And it's because the most effective technology transfer mechanism in the United States is the legal profession. Nothing like I'm serious, billions of dollars worth of litigation is causing the engineers and architects and contractors to stop doing stupid things. So believe it or not, we can't teach them this in university and college, but there's nothing like the insurance industry and the legal industry to get but so you push things to failure. And then if you're not a complete moron, you understand, well, why did you fail? And then you step back. So let me tell you what the insurance industry has discovered: building science. And they don't call it building science. They call it, project management, building review. And what ended up happening is that one of the reasons that I'm such a famous and handsome guy was a long time ago, I said, we commission mechanical systems. Why don't we commission buildings? And the best way to deal with commissioning is you do it at the design stage with the architects and the contractors involved.
I think Adam's got a tear in his eye right now.
Yeah, no, I'm on board.
I became the person who began to push building commissioning and building. And the trouble was that they said, well, it has to be building envelope commissioning. And I got irritated at that. No, it's mechanical systems and the enclosure. And by the way, you should ask me, how come I use the word enclosure and not envelope?
Right.
No,
Let's ask that question
yeah.
later.
Well, because one of my mentors, Eric Burnett, a South African Rhodesian immigrant who became a legend in Canada with CMHC and the National Research Council, says, young Joseph, Federal Express does envelopes. We do enclosures. So if you ever hear somebody using the word enclosure, it's an Eric Burnett protege. Ask John Straub. Straube is one of Eric Burnett's pride and joy. So,
yeah, right. So where do you stand on fabric then?
Where do I stand on fabric?
Yeah.
We're not talking about dressmaking.
No, but don't the Europeans use fabric, Adam? Isn't that?
No, you're right. But and we have a communication problem. But no, look, I'm just simply saying that what's changing the industry is the insurance industry and the legal profession. And it's unfortunate that that's what's happening, but big changes are occurring. I mean, literally no major project of any kind in the United States or Canada gets constructed without a building enclosure or building envelope review commissioning. The insurance industry requires it. Now we still have a lot of thousands of retrofits and other stuff that doesn't happen, but nothing like having California burned down. By the way, that was completely avoidable and preventable and whatever. And so people are beginning to ask, and all of these things are easily avoidable and preventable. We just haven't had to deal with it until things become intolerably bad. Well, they're now becoming intolerably bad. And one of the reasons is they're spending a lot of money. So we're doing it bad with large volumes and lots of money. And so we're being very efficient at being bad. And that's going to allow us to become very, very good. Okay. But I'm asked to speak at conferences. Now you have to give a positive message. And I'm like, yeah, okay, eventually I'll get around to it.
But you've hit a nail on the head. One of the things I've always been going about, change really only comes when something breaks, right? Political change, physical change. And the invisible hand in our industry, misquoting Adam Smith here, is the insurance industry. NFPA is a consequence of the insurance industry, right?
Yeah. No,
So,
you're right on it. And again, I like to say failure has made me the man that I am today.
now, what's going to happen in US residential? Certain parts of the US are going to become uninsurable. California is an example. Florida is an example, right? When you get federal insurance, that lets you build in places you shouldn't build, right? Should you build in a floodplain or a hurricane zone? Probably not, right? But federal insurance distorts the market. Private insurance says, no, we're not going to cover you.
But we know how to build in hurricane zones, and we know how to build in places where it gets intermittently wet. We just have not been doing it correctly.
Yeah, agreed.
And it's embarrassing. I mean, they're incredibly good now in South Texas because of the floods.
Yeah.
The Florida Panhandle, nothing like getting whacked with a couple of hurricanes to figure it out. Believe it or not, on the structural side in Florida, the new houses residentially that are being built are insanely good structural. Now, the problem is we're also doing all kinds of stupid things like, gee, we need to overventilate for indoor air quality reasons. And I point out, no, you shouldn't have stupid stuff in the building to begin with, and you shouldn't do stupid stuff. And that way, dilution is not the solution indoor pollution. Says, well, how can it can't hurt? And I says, well, no, it actually can. So the biggest selling thing that we have in Florida now is a dehumidifier, because the air conditioners can't dehumidify. See, one of the reasons that I'm such a famous and handsome guy, as I pointed out two things: that an air conditioner is a dehumidifier, but it only dehumidifies when it's running. I'm a legend. And so what have we done to the run time?
Pay my bill, please.
We've reduced it by a half because we've done all of the great windows, the insulation, the lighting. I mean, we've reduced by 50% or more the energy load. So the air conditioner can't run. And so we have to then plug in something called a dehumidifier, which runs on electricity. See, you can't get your money for nothing and your chicks for free. That's the second law of thermodynamics put to music by the second best guitarist of all time, Mark Knopfler. Just letting you know it.
Yeah.
Now, south, you go up north and you have a high ventilation rate. We dry the building out. And so now you need a humidifier. You want to humidify a building? That's an ISIS bioweapon, right? You have to use distilled water and whatever. So now we're purchasing energy recovery ventilators in both the north and the south. And so if I was smart and I had any money 20 years ago, I should have invested in a humidification company and a dehumidification company and an energy recovery company. And you remember the movie The Graduate, The Future is Plastics?
Yeah.
The future is humidifiers, dehumidifiers, and ERVs. And it's, we're going through pain, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Then we'll fix it. But
Well, and going back, I remember at the same time that I met you was, I don't know if Gord Cook was working for Vanny at the time, but I remember seeing the early versions of that. So you're right. Had I 40 years ago put my money into HRVs, well, we wouldn't be talking. Certainly not here.
We wouldn't be on your volcano.
We'd be talking outside in one of those places.
That's right.
Place that I'm renting, okay?
So, look, this is something as few guests have said. Energy is just a horrible proxy for high performance buildings, right?
Well, look, as an engineer, I'm born with a genetic defect. It's called the efficiency gene. I can't help myself. It's part of the deal. But I'm an old engineer, and I compensate for the fact that, you have to compensate for this change in energy flow. And we're not explaining that. We're not teaching it. We're not getting it across to the people that need to know. The other issue, and this is a really gets me into trouble. But what the heck? You can edit this out.
All right. Okay.
Stupid should hurt, but stupid should hurt quickly. See, when you're a kid and you put your hand on the stove, ooh, the
Yeah.
stupid action and the pain you learn.
Simultaneous.
We're doing stupid stuff, but it takes 10 to 15 years for the pain to come back, you see? And that, comes with the insurance industry and the legal profession. So what's kind of neat is that the gap between the stupid action and the pain is now shrinking. And we're improving because things are becoming intolerably painful. So people say, well, Joe, aren't you depressed? And I says, well, no, I'm thrilled because we're going to fix this now because it is so painful. People are now figuring out that we have to fix it. I'm rather disappointed that we have to go through this approach or protocol, but at the end of the day, we're going to end up with a fabulous construction industry, fabulous architects and engineers and contractors, and products that we can just even dream of right now. But we're going through this, and we're bottoming out. Yeah. So, gee, Joe, isn't this great that all this thing, where everything good is happening? I said, no, you don't understand. See, I never get a call say, Joe, things are going great. Let's have a beer. I don't get the call. I said, it's the end of the world. The vampires are here. Ah! Right. And you're not allowed to tell about the vampires. Oh, you can't say anything. So I say things and, make up a few names because I can't say unless somebody deposes me.
Right.
In which case, you'll be amazed what I have to tell. And then they were, well, maybe we should settle, not let Dr. Lstiburek testify.
Have you seen Joe talk at a conference? You should just settle. I remember there was one. I think it was on the West Coast, and it was at an architectural conference, and somebody in the crowd got on your case. And I think you basically said, "Hey, look, buddy, I came here to paid to do a lecture. You get your own lecture and get your own money," or something like that. Basically, just shut the
Well, it was funny because I love engaging in a discussion about physics and the industry and the impact of people in design and whatever. And I love engaging with people that have different opinions. I'm in those discussions, I'm insanely respectful because that's how I learned.
Yeah.
And I don't like it when you're put on a panel and you're there to have your heart ripped out, or you're supposed to rip out somebody else's heart. And I'm not a wuss. I'm not terrified. I mean, I can take a heavyweight fight and a punch, and I can, if you really want to have a brawl with me, you're gonna hurt. But we don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. But we can engage and disagree. And ask me if I've never made a mistake in my life, and I've always been right in everything I've ever written and done. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
I tried that once in a relationship. That didn't work out very well.
One of the things you sort of notice as you get older, I look back, I think one of the problems with engineers and highly sort of technical people is they all compete on who's the cleverest person in the room, right? And that's what's going on in that lecture you were talking about. That person thought he was clever than you, and he wanted to challenge you and make himself look good. And that is the whole problem with our business. Engineers are horrible at collaborating and communicating their ideas. Tell me I'm wrong.
That guy was one of your peer reviewers, by the way, Joe.
No, you're not wrong. And by the way, it's the same in all of the industries, right? Yeah. Just look at what's happening with respect to the press, media. Look at what's happening in the medical scene. I mean, it's like you got people that are trying to beat the crap out of each other with no professional respect. Yeah. Every now and then you find somebody that has that respect and is good and can take a punch and, kind of fine,
And just,
respond respectfully. But if they keep coming for you,
yeah.
I kill
I always
them.
see that as
Just
a
letting
sign
you
of
know,
fragility.
maybe we probably shouldn't share this presentation with undergraduates. Okay?
That's the real world. Hey, another observation. Why is it that homeowners or people who are buying homes or planning on building a home in their own life, like if they're going to look for a veterinarian for their pets, they will spend hours shopping for a vet. If they're looking to buy a car, they'll do hours of research on the vehicle. If they're looking for elective surgery, they'll spend hours looking at the surgeons. But when it comes to their own home, they put their faith in an industry that really doesn't know what the F it's doing.
Well, yeah, no argument with you there at all. Now, having said that, because it's such a mess, there's a real opportunity there, isn't there?
Agreed.
And
100%. Yeah.
if I was a youngster, which I'm not,
What?
I could create this is going to sound really bad. I could create a dating service or a mating service for really smart people. Of course, they would end up calling me a pimp. All right, that's a bad word. But the point is that there are beginning to have networks of people that are recommending other people. Some of the most successful custom home builders in, Texas, have because they have a really good reputation and they go out of their way to make sure that their people are trained. They don't have Billy Bob and Guido just do stuff. They actually go out of their way to actually train the people that are doing the work. They also make sure that it's done correctly, and if there's an issue, they don't run and hide and they don't blame the homeowner and the occupant that it's your damn fault. I mean, sometimes it is like 1 out of 20, all right? It's not 1 out of 100, but gee, you're rebuilding your carburetor in the living room, bathtub. That's probably a dumb thing to do. But most of the time, the issues are legitimate, and the trend has been that they created warranty departments. And then one of the guys that taught me said, you wouldn't need much of a warranty department if you didn't have the problem in the first place.
Correct.
Right.
So I would probably want to hire a company that doesn't have a huge warranty department, but it has a good reputation, because that tells me something. And so, yeah, and it's happening. The network is happening because, believe it or not, word of mouth sells more houses and buildings than advertising. And word of mouth comes from, wow, they did a really nice job. I had a problem, they fixed it. Blah blah blah, and so there are some very successful mid-sized builders that are working on this. I'm not going to comment on the large builders.
Yeah.
Some of them are insanely good, and some of them are insanely bad, and I'm going to leave it at that.
That's called buyer beware.
Well,
Yeah,
and what's also, so that's new construction. The resales and whatever, and the renovations, they tend to be worse. And in new construction, we actually have more knowledge than in retrofit rehabilitation business. And with all of the energy and the green stuff that we're going to be asking people to do and giving them money to do, that's what worries me more than anything else. I'd say buy a new house. Don't buy an old house that somebody fixed up unless you really have confidence in the person who fixed it up. You're fixing it up. Okay, I'm getting myself into trouble with this. Okay, we're going to end up having to redo and fix up most of the infrastructure, and I'm worried, nervous, terrified that we're going to do a horrible freaking job of it, even though our hearts and our intent is in the right place. It's just that we're not applying the lessons of history. Nobody's ever heard of the second law of thermodynamics, and they're all about the politics. And like most things, things become painful, and then it gets fixed. My favorite quote about Americans comes from Winston Churchill. And by the way, I'm an American now.
Yeah.
And he says, Americans can always be counted upon to do the right thing after all of the alternatives have been exhausted.
Yeah, that's so true. So just to get you in a bit more trouble then.
You can't possibly get me into any more.
So I share your concerns because there's a lot of net zero this, green building that, right? And it's all well intentioned. But my thing is, can't we just do what we do now properly? That would be a massive start. So where do you land on the sort of green building, electrification, net zero drives?
I don't think they know what they're doing.
Thank you. That's exactly how I feel.
I don't think they know what the hell they're doing. And this is for the youngsters if they ever want to listen to the old man speak. Okay. The biggest thing we worry about is fire. We got that figured out.
Yeah.
Next is structure. We got that figured out. Not a lot of people die from fire, even though we build out of stuff that burns in the United States.
Yeah.
Not a lot of buildings fall down. The reason that structural engineers are so boring is that they don't have many problems. Okay. You want a personality. You talk to an architect or a mechanical engineer, and you're always going to blame somebody else. But the point is that what has happened is that we then worry about the damage functions after fire and structure, and they're water, heat, and ultraviolet light. And of the three, the worst is water. Well, we've always been building outside out of wet stuff. That is correct. And here's why I'm a famous guy. Are you ready for this? Wait for this. It's okay for things to get wet if they dry.
Correct.
I know I can't help myself. Okay. Wetting followed by drying is okay. The trouble is that we've changed the drying because drying requires an exchange of energy. When we've doubled and tripled the energy efficiency of the building, the drying potential is reduced. We've not kept in moisture balance to reduce the wetting potential. So if we are going to be ultra energy efficient, we have so little tolerance for moisture, we have to be insanely good at prevention of wetting. And what's happened is that we've not handled the wetting potential to be in balance with the drying potential. It gets worse. We aren't building with very durable materials. We used to, youngsters are stunned when I say we used to go to places called forests and cut trees down and cut them into boards and build boats and sail them around the world. Try doing that with a sheet of OSB. Are you kidding me? I call OSB the spam of wood. I call spam the OSB of luncheon.
Spam of wood. I like that.
It's like, are you? I view engineered wood as an insult to wooden engineers. Okay. So are we going to go back to building out of 1,000-year-old trees and rocks with no insulation? And the answer is no. We're going to insulate even more than we're doing now. But we have to come to terms with the fact that we can't build them the way we used to new. And it's easier to do that with a clean sheet of paper with a net zero new building. Do you have any idea how difficult it is to take a 50-year or 100-year building and then make it net zero?
It's not possible.
I mean, we can do it. I am arrogant enough to believe that I know how to do it. Well, that's because the old timers taught me, and there are a bunch of old timers like me around that know how to do these things, but that's not what's happening. And so we're having to go through this pain and misery issue problem to then get motivated religious or activist or whatever to say, okay, the best way to have a low carbon footprint is to have the building last 1,000 years, not to have it net zero for 20 and having to,
tear it down.
haul it away because it's rotted.
Yeah.
And so, this part of the energy thing is you want to make sure that you're durable. Now, as part of the energy and durability thing at the same time, you should make sure that people are healthy. Now, when they say, well, the building is built out of unhealthy stuff, not always, not most of the time, is we fill it with stupid stuff and we have people doing stupid things. And so, you build this net zero energy efficient, healthy house and you fill it with stupid shit. Just saying.
Yeah.
Anyway, so now, having said all that, I'm not depressed. I'm smiling. We're going through the pain period, and it's going to be a little bit more painful for the next decade, and then we're going to come out of it in a really, really positive way. Well, Joe, how can we avoid the pain? Well, make me completely in charge of freaking everything. Right.
That's normally my line.
Okay. I got exactly the reaction I wanted to get. That's not how it works, okay?
Yeah.
Not how it works.
It does in my mind. Which is small. No, that's I couldn't agree more with that. What about the sort of electrification of everything? From a sort of like, I've worked on a lot of mission critical buildings, and that sounds like a single point of failure to me. I don't even think our current infrastructure.
Okay, look, people hope that the electricity comes out of the freaking outlet.
Yeah.
The problem is that we're not having a reliable energy grid. It's pathetic. It's insanely pathetic. And the war against coal, natural gas, nuclear, whatever, if you really think a bunch of PV panels and some wind turbines are going to allow us to electrify the United States and Canada, I want to know what alcohol that is because I want to have a drink of it.
I couldn't agree more with
and
that.
so, I mean, this is insane. I live in I'm not, unlike most experts and consultants, I'm not a hypocrite. I have a net zero house. I renovated an 1840 house with an attached barn, and it's net zero. But I have PV arrays, but I have a backup natural gas generator.
Yeah.
And I don't rely on the natural gas. So I have propane backup to the natural gas for my freaking generator, which is a backup to the PV. It's like you know what people are calling me? A building science prepper.
I was just about to say prepper.
Oh God. Oh God.
What you're doing.
Next time you come and visit me, and if you find out that I've actually dug my own well, he's beyond hope.
So Adam, the first and only time that I've been to Joe's backyard, the first thing Joe did was took me to the garage where the kitchen is, or what is that? I mean, you've got a full-size commercial kitchen. It looked like you'd just given birth to a baby. How proud you were of it. In terms of you were doing kitchen design the way kitchen design should have been long before it became an issue for Lawrence Berkeley National Lab.
Well, you know what? I have 500 people for 4.5 days in my backyard, and I have to feed them. I'm not going to have people. We tried to cater it at first, and they were incompetent. And then I said, well, we could actually have some fun with this. And so we've our event, this is going to be our 28th year. In year one and year two, we had 15 people, and people would come over to my backyard and I'd be flipping burgers on the whatever. And then year three, we had 50 people, and all of a sudden, and we get to 100, and we started figuring, well, wow, what if this really gets out of control? And so let me explain what the boundary condition was. The boundary condition was the size of the ballroom in the hotel could hold 500 people. So I figured that we could max out at 500 people. Well, why don't you just move it into downtown Boston? I said, well, the big deal with an educational conference event is that you don't want the people to escape after the programs to go to 25 different restaurants and bars.
Yeah.
You want them to end up having to be together to engage, because the networking and the discussion is way more important than the 30-minute presentation. So the idea is that, well, you want to make it so that they want to come and hang out in your backyard and hang out with each other. And so, out of 500 people over the course of the years, I've run into some people who really know how to do kitchens. And so you kind of freaking listen to them.
Right.
It was amazing. And so, one of the guys that was the first executive chef, and it's kind of funny, he's basically a consultant on doing remediating mold damaged buildings, but he grew up in an Italian restaurant. He worked in the Italian restaurant. His mother was a chief cook in the restaurant. His father-in-law was owner, and so he knew restaurants. And
Is that Pete?
That's Pete Consigli. And so, year number 3, I'm grilling stuff and whatever, and Pete comes up to me and he says, "You're drunk. You're burning the burgers and the hot dogs. Some of them are falling into the whatever. You're pathetic." And I said, "You could do better here. And you're in charge." And he says, "Well, what's your budget?" "I don't care. Here's my credit card." And so, he created the next night this incredible meal. And he got one of his friends. His name was Jack Springston. And Jack Springston is a famous industrial hygienist, but he put himself through school as a short order cook. So you got 2 professionals who created, this incredible meal on day 3. So I asked, "So do we want to do, building science next year?" He says, "Yeah, but Jack and Peter got to cook." So they then, Jack knows restaurants from the design side. Pete knows restaurants from how to operate stuff. And I was smart enough to know that I was stupid, and I listened. And so we designed, we ended up creating this thing that we use it like 4 days a year. And people come in and say, "Oh my God, this is a professional commercial kitchen that's done correctly. You're a genius." No, I hung out with smart people. And listened to smart
Hang
people.
on, just to double click on this, then you have once a year there's like a Woodstock for building science nerds.
Yeah.
Actually, I think they learned from us.
I did not know that.
And it's by invitation only. And I know the organizer. If you want to get invited, I could probably get you in.
It's
But,
Woodstock, but it's also a cult. It's like the Bilderberg group for building nerds.
Well, what ends up happening is that, everybody's hanging out together and talking, and you're like, "Oh my God, that's Robert Bean. Wow, you can actually talk to him. Oh my God, that's John Straub. He's got a beer. We can talk to him. Oh my God, that you got usually 20 of the world's most famous
Mark Bomberg.
Bombergs, whatever, that do the presentations. And then the deal is they have to stay for the entire event. And the event is, the presentations are on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, but everybody starts showing up on Friday afternoon. And so Friday afternoon, Saturday and Sunday, we got the outdoor event. And then, we end up with, 50 people on Friday, 150 people on Saturday, 300 people on Sunday, and then 500 people on Monday and Tuesday. And on Wednesday, we're done at noon, but half of the people don't go home. They stay. And the presentations, I think, are pretty good, but people are figuring out that the presentations are incidental to the networking.
Yeah.
And when you got somebody who's incredibly famous talking to a youngster and enjoying it, are you kidding me? That's kind of the deal. So this will be our 27th year.
That's interesting.
And when
So
when did the Building Science Boogie Band come into existence? I've had a chance to play with Eric and Michael and Kimberly, and
That was
they're awesome people. And
that was started year two. A guy showed up with a guitar and just started playing in the backyard. And year three, we were out of control. You know how that is. And so now, let me tell you how weird it's become. That band, they're all professional, engineers, architects, contractors, researchers.
Yeah.
They actually get invited to play at other conferences. That's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, so I'm with the band, but I also have a PhD in physics. Well, okay.
take the band.
By the way, I am not part of the band per se, because I have no musical talent. I played a saxophone badly when I was in high school, but I sometimes write some of the songs.
The lyrics
to the song. Yeah. When I was just a young boy, my mom always said, always be a good boy. Don't ever play with puns. I flashed the wall in Reno just to watch it try. I know.
They played at the
and the guy that does it is called Joey Cash.
Joey Cash. That's too funny.
The youngsters don't understand that old people occasionally have a sense of humor. Okay,
and they can have a good time.
They can have a good time. Yeah.
Oh, that's
well, we're actually at the end, which is too bad, Joe, because I mean we could talk to you for a long, long time, but we do these quick rapid fire questions. And the one I think I'm going to ask you lots, but there was a few years ago, and Terry Meyer Boakes, I think, who's from the University of Waterloo. I think she's maybe a colleague of John's. And I was listening to her talk, and she was talking about these publishing houses making millions and millions of dollars off of research papers. And her words were, and I'll do this as if I'm talking to an 8-year-old, because the words that she used were kind of foul. But it was basically, we're trying to save the world. Share your effing research. Like, quit charging for it. So where do you stand on the world of research and publications and having to charge for it or pay for it?
Well, I've got 500 publications on our website, and it's free. That kind of tells you my answer.
Yeah.
Now, gee, Joe, you've got 5 books. I became my own publisher, but you charge for them. Well, yeah, the printing costs and the handling costs. If I'm with you. I want to give away the information as efficiently as possible.
Yeah.
Because the information I'm giving away, most of it I got from old timers that had the luxury of sharing that information with me and teaching me. I've also had horrible, disgusting, miserable experience with the peer review process. And I went to the point where I refuse to do that. We like to publish your paper, but it has to go through peer review. Well, you can't publish my paper.
exactly right.
Well, how people won't know about it. And I says, well, actually, more people come to my website than come to yours.
The reason why I asked that question, because again, it's for the students, that if you learn who the legends are and you're humble enough to learn, put your arrogance aside, put your ego aside, that you'll get to a place in your life where you're going to write stuff. And if you give back as people gave so that you could learn, you know, charging for information that you stole from somebody else is just really wrong. Like,
Well, no,
you know,
I totally agree. Now, there's a difference between, hey, we got a major problem in a 30-story apartment building. I charge thousands of dollars,
yeah.
have to give up a day of skiing
Yeah.
to fly somewhere, to go there, figure it out, write a recommendation, and fly back. And by the way, when I put the recommendation down on paper, I'm legally liable for it.
Yes.
I have a $2 million error and omission liability insurance. You think that's freaking cheap?
Mm.
And okay, so, but gee, Joe, you charge them for that. Well, yeah, but had they read the stuff that's free online and paid attention, they wouldn't have had to pay for it later.
Yeah.
I view it as
Yeah.
basically punishment for being stupid.
Stupid tax.
I love it. I love it. There was one. Go
Sorry,
ahead, Adam. Well, I was going to say at one time when I had my website up and I would filter out a lot of the tire kickers, and like you, I gave away everything. Whatever I learned, I gave it away. There must have been like 75, 80 presentations that were from my career that are online. And I would just say, I'm not writing a book because that's what my website's for. That's it. And then I would say to people, look, either do the studies on your own for free. It's all yours. You can have it. But if you want to cross to the dark side and you actually want to talk to me, which I don't understand why, well, you're gonna have to pay for it. Yeah, you got to pay me.
But I go through it. Look, if it's a 10-minute conversation, view it as a professional courtesy. If it's longer than that, I'm gonna charge you, and my hourly rate is not cheap. Let me tell you what I don't do. I don't get involved in chats.
Yeah.
Like, because you say something, and then you got 500 people who are insanely opinionated and usually colossally, arrogantly stupid and evil, wanting to argue with you. And so now,
Yeah.
how come you don't have a chat box? Well, you send us an email that's not going to be shared with anybody else. And if I feel like responding to it, I will. And if I don't, I'll press delete. Well, you're a censor. Yeah, you're damn right I am. I'm not going to deal with the kind of crap that,
Yeah.
so I mean, we post videos and stuff, and then there are people that are answering, putting comments, and I'm going to delete the ability to do comments because some of them are piss me off because are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You have no freaking idea about what you're talking about. And you're rude. If you wanted to ask it in a reasonable way, I've read this once and I heard about this, whatever. You say this, what's the reason? That is awesome. But as opposed to you're completely wrong, blah 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 blah, and
Yeah.
No, it's all projection by them. I mean, I do the same. I turn comments off. Just post and ghost. That's my rule.
Yeah.
But just on the knowledge and R&D, I think knowledge and R&D should be open source, but applied knowledge and how-tos and how to fixes, yeah, charge like a mofo for that. That's where I sit.
I agree.
Yeah. So my final question, and we'll let you go, is if you were starting today from scratch, fresh, 20, handsome, no grey hair, what would you do? Would you do it all again?
Oh yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. I was accidentally found my place on the planet, and I'm enjoying the heck out of it. I wouldn't. I'd probably be more efficient at this, but yeah, I ended up doing stuff that I love with people that I love, and that's doesn't get better than that.
So anyone who's listening here, that is a career well executed, right? When you can sit back at the end of your career and say that, I think that's a life well lived. So congrats.
Yeah. And the
Well, thank
kids
you for that.
listening online can learn a lot from that. And
Yeah.
I think all the three of us, we're lucky to be able to say that.
Yeah.
I've never felt like I ever had a job in my life. Every day I get up and it's just been like, are you kidding me? I get to do this.
Well,
Like
listen,
that's,
it's an honor to be on your 100th podcast.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Thank you, and I'm
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
looking forward to having conversations with you until the end of time.
That'd be awesome.
Great, man.
Have a great
Thanks
day
for
skiing there,
coming on.
bud.
The Edifice Complex will continue in just a moment.
Are you passionate about the built environment? Do you want to learn from the industry's most inspiring, intelligent, and accomplished professionals? Then the companion to this podcast, Wisdom of the Property Crowd, is just the book for you. From Edifice Complex podcast interviews, this book distills the critical thinking, insight, and ideas of some of the property industry's most accomplished and respected practitioners. Each chapter is a synopsis of an hour-plus interview, capturing the takeaways and insights, including diagrams and images, to help explain concepts and ideas. There's also a brief bio about the interviewee and a QR code linked to the podcast episode for those that want to explore further. These are the mentors you wish you had in college. Wisdom of the Property Crowd by Adam Muggleton, available on Amazon worldwide.
And now, back to the show.
Big thanks to Joe for being on our 100th show. That was that was epic.
Yeah, there was a Obi-Wan Kenobi there I never knew existed, and I am very impressed, I have to say.
Well, you know what? It's interesting because on the continent, Joe was pretty well known, right?
Yeah.
And really, I mean, he is known elsewhere in the world too, because he's done work in many other places, right? But when history looks back on the era of Joe, there will be a blip,
Yeah.
and that blip will be what Joe and Joe's team. And when I say Joe's team, I mean it's Joe and all the people that he's touched in his life. There'll be a blip, and that will be his contribution. And they'll go, "What the hell is that blip all about?" So, well, that's when Joe was alive.
This is, but he's an example of, like one of the things I talk about is how architects can become immortal, like Norman Foster, people like that. Their buildings will stand long after they're gone. They will be known 100, 200 years from now, right? But this is how you do that when you're an engineering nerd, right? Yeah, he's going to have a footprint that will go on, right? In his published work, the networks he's created, the value he's created, the solutions he's provided, they all will be there, right? And it will stand the test of time, right?
Yeah.
So there is a way for engineers to sort of compete with architects that way. And I think he provides a model on how to do that.
Yeah, and his ethos. Well, you know what? It's funny, Adam. Like this is our 100th anniversary. When I think back at all the guests that we've had, which have been all thoroughbreds. I mean, we've been really lucky that there's a vein that runs through all of these individuals, and that is their willingness to share, what they know.
Yeah.
Their frankness in terms of you're going to pay for some of this, and that's the way it should be.
Absolutely.
But that. I mean, you go to Joe's website, Building Science Corporation, and you look at the stuff that he's produced over his career. It's phenomenal. I mean, it changed the game. So we were lucky to have him on the show, and grateful that for those that are listening to this sort of summary that Adam and I do at the end, the wisdom. This is where the gems are. Is the wisdom at the end. He left a lot of really good information for those young kids. If you're a student, get to know the legends. If you can become their best friend forever, great. But your chances are that's not going to happen. You're going to end up stalking them, but stalk them from afar.
Yeah,
but
don't be the craziest girlfriend. But
keep them on your radar screen.
Yeah.
Read their stuff. Read the stuff that they learned from. Take their classes. find a way to get into their circle, because your parents are right. That's the friends you pick will tell you how your life is going to go. And if you can, for us, picking the people, the mentors that we've had, it's just, yeah, it's been an amazing, amazing ride.
I really enjoyed, he sort of validated a lot of my sort of angry thoughts about the green building movement, because it's a bit of a false prophet. Do you know what I mean? There's his whole thing about the moisture control on that, who talks about
Yeah, right?
that?
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
I can count on one hand
Yeah.
how many times someone's brought that up as a proper like engineering riddle to solve, right? Because everyone's following the script, everyone's on board with the current cult, and no one's really thinking, the whole thing about electricity being everything, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. It's good, but unless we're building a lot of nuclear power plants, this whole thing is not going anywhere, right?
Well, certainly, time is the great revealer,
Yeah,
right? And I learned a long time ago, you have to see the world on a continuum,
yeah,
because that's what it is. And 100 years from now or 200 years from now, it's going to be a different story than it is today. And maybe another form of energy will come up, that isn't based on fossil fuels. But in the meantime, we're going to have hybrid systems. That's just the way it is.
yeah. Yeah, that's just because politics has seeped into the solutions. It's become ridiculous, right? I'm a big believer in. I consider myself an environmentalist, but I believe in adaptation. You King Canute could not stop the tide coming in. If you think we can change the climate, good effing luck with that, right?
Right.
What we can do is adapt to things and react to things. And that is the reality we should be dealing with, in my opinion. But there's so many people on the political train, it's hard to freaking go against it and argue for what should be done. I don't know. It depresses me a little bit. But it's glad to see someone who's way more intelligent than me sort of articulate what I think in my brain when I'm modulating between angry and super angry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing with someone like Joe, is that, you get a snapshot of what's going on in his brain.
Yeah.
And, if you had more time to be with individuals like that, that more of the story gets fleshed out.
Yeah.
It's the geometry becomes more clearer in what they're thinking. And, there are, like, Joe's none of the people we've had on as guests are stupid people. They're smart people, and they all know that, within their lens, it gets a little gray on the outside.
Yeah.
And every once in a while on the edge, there's an opening that, maybe provides a different way for the aperture to work.
Yeah.
But until those openings become clear, they have some fairly clear ideas, as you do, with regards to energy and green. We had Jerry Udelson on twice, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? We ought to get him on again, just to see where he's at these days.
It's interesting. He really is the Yoda of the green building movement, right?
Has he completely abandoned it? Like, he was back in his house when he wrote his last book, I guess it was, and kind of being reflective at, as people do when they get to be Jerry's place in life. And as Joe, it's great to be, where Joe is, and being able to reflect back on your career. And
I'll tell you who, it's people like Peter Rumsey, people like that, who are still sort of active and influential. These are the ones that should be really pushing hard for the real solutions, right? I know it's hard, right? Because you want to get on and not get fired, all this stuff. But holy crap, I have a feeling sometimes I think we're going into a dark place, and the solutions are just not adequate for what we're facing. And I guess old man shit, right?
Hey, by the way, Peter Rumsey started a new company. Maybe we think we tried to get him on a couple of times.
We should do.
If there's anybody out there in our listener audience that can get Peter's ear, we would love to have him on for sure.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. Okay, mate. Look, I'll see you on the next one. But that was good. 100. Wow, I can't believe it. Well done.
Congratulations, Adam. That's that. When I think back 7.5 years ago when we met, and that was awesome. Thanks for inviting me on as your co-host. And,
no, that's been
awesome.
Brilliant, mate. It's been a great ride, and there's more rides to come. There's more wrongs to right.
That's right. All right, bud.
See you later. Bye.
See you later.
You've been listening to the Edifice Complex podcast with Adam Muggleton and Robert Bean. To access show notes for this episode, visit edificecomplexpodcast.com. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review on iTunes. See you next time.